All right, the battle is brewing over President Trump's big, beautiful bill. The Senate is making changes to the House blueprint, including decreasing the cap on deductions to state and local taxes, commonly known as SALT. And my next guest is not too happy about it. Republican Congressman Mike Lawler from New York to talk about this. How dare they? The Senate is mixing up the formula the House laid out. Your thoughts on the changes, on the Medicaid changes that they're proposing, and also on SALT?
Well, obviously, there's still a long way to go here in terms of getting to a final bill. It's been going through the bird bath these last few days, and obviously there's provisions that pass the House that are being removed by the parliamentarians. So there's still a long way to go, a lot of conversations to be had, but I've been very clear that the deal that was reached in the House when it comes to the ability to deduct state and local taxes, for everyone across the country. This isn't just a blue state issue. This impacts everybody across the country. And 29 states blew past the $10,000 cap that is currently in effect over the last 7 years. So the reality is a lot more people are impacted than some of my colleagues seem to realize, including states like Texas, where they have high property taxes. This is about ending double taxation. Making sure that people are not being penalized because of high property taxes or state income taxes on their federal income tax return. We negotiated a fair deal to lift the cap from $10,000 to $40,000 with a $500,000 income cap, and that is the deal that should remain intact. I and 4 of my other colleagues that were part of these negotiations have been very clear that we will not support a final bill that does not maintain the deal that was negotiated in the House.
And we have this beautiful graphic that talks about just those numbers that you were talking about, the SALT deduction cap, the difference. The Senate wants 10,000. You're talking about the 40,000. Another big aspect of this back and forth is about the Medicaid cuts. Senator Hawley has been one of the biggest critics on what the GOP wants to do over there regarding the changes to the Medicaid cuts. Your thought on if that will be a sticking point as well?
Look, as I worked through this in the House, I and about 20 plus of my colleagues pushed back against a number of the proposed changes, including FMAP reduction from 50% federal share to 45% federal share, per capita caps, block grants, changes to the provider tax, dish cuts. We were able to push back on that and agree on a few key areas: eligibility verification, speeding that up from an annual basis to a semi-annual basis, citizenship verification, making sure that illegal immigrants don't collect Medicaid benefits, and work requirements to make sure that able-bodied adults without dependents are in fact trying to obtain work, go to school, or volunteer for 80 hours a month. That is something that has broad consensus. That is where we were able to find consensus in the House. I think changes that are being proposed in the Senate are going to have a very difficult time getting support in the House.
All right, before we let you go, we want to ask you about the Middle East. And there's breaking news that the Iran-backed Houthis out of Yemen say that they will target American ships in the Red Sea if the U.S. does get involved in the Israeli attacks on Iran. Your reaction?
Well, President Trump was right to label the Houthis a foreign terrorist organization when he came back into office after the Biden administration stupidly removed them from that designation. They had been attacking U.S. ships. President Trump took action and struck back against them. I think if the Houthis interject themselves into this situation, they are going to be on the receiving end of quite a response. So I would caution the Houthis to stay out of this. The fact is, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Their funding of terror proxies, including the Houthis, is going to come to an end. And their illicit oil trade with China, which has been funding all of this, including their ballistic missiles program and their nuclear program, is going to come to an end as well. So the Houthis would be well advised to sit down and shut up, frankly.
Yeah, and they have faced quite a bombardment in recent months and for weeks long. So they do have some understanding of what the United States military is capable of. So I find it interesting that they're speaking out in this manner now. But, I mean, Iran has a great number of proxies all across the Middle East. We're taking a look at that map. There's a pretty powerful proxies in Iraq, very close to where many of our troops are stationed all across the Middle East. Your thought on the broader threat that Iran poses through its proxies on our troops that are there stationed in the Middle East?
Well, this is the challenge. We have 40,000 troops in the Middle East. And remember, 700,000 Americans live in Israel as dual citizens, either part-time or full-time. So there are a lot of Americans and American assets and obviously military personnel in the region. I think any of these proxies would be extremely foolish to attack U.S. military bases or personnel. That will not end well for them at all. Iran is on the verge of a collapse here. There's no question about that. If you look at what has happened, their air defenses have been decimated. Their nuclear program is on the brink. Their terror proxies largely have been decimated in Hamas and Hezbollah. Assad's regime in Syria collapsed. So there is a lot of opportunity here for lasting change and peace. And certainly eliminating the threat posed by Iran and its terror proxies is vital to ensure that long-term peace and stability in the Middle East.
Congressman Mike Lawler, thank you. Our gratitude to you on this Saturday morning. Thanks for chatting with us.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.